They told me to check the mailbox and keep the porch light on like I was some kind of house ghost they could count on but never carry along. You're too old for long flights, Grandma. Just watch the house. That's what they said before piling into that rented SUV, all smiles and sunscreen, talking about Cancún beaches and bottomless margaritas. They didn't see my face as they pulled away. I didn't say a word, just lifted my hand from the porch railing and let it drop. But the next morning, I found their plane tickets in my mailbox, still in the travel agency envelope, sealed and untouched. I held them for a full minute like they were somebody else's burden. Departure in 3 days. Cancun, 2 adults, 2 children, seats together. My name was nowhere. Of course it wasn't. I brought them inside, set them on the kitchen table next to the sugar bowl, and put on a pot of chamomile. That's what you do at my age when something cracks you open from the inside. You brew something warm and wait for your hands to stop shaking. But they didn't stop. They trembled when I reached for the old phone book in the junk drawer, when I found the number for the travel agency. I'd like to cancel these tickets, I said. The girl on the other end got quiet. Can I ask why, ma'am? No, I said. Just cancel them. There was a pause, then a careful, nervous, yes ma'am. I wrote down the confirmation number on the back of a church bulletin. Then I made another cup of tea, eased myself into the recliner where I used to rock Marcus to sleep 40-some years ago, and looked around the living room. James's photo was still on the mantel, still in his army dress uniform, still smiling like the world owed him nothing but time. He'd been gone 20 years. If he were here, none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have allowed it. I'd been everything in this house. A wife, a nurse's aide, a Sunday school teacher, a cook who could stretch a chicken into 3 meals, a fixer of scraped knees and shattered hearts. And for the last decade, just Grandma. Not Dorothy. Not Mama. A presence in the background, quiet and agreeable. They figured I'd sit in this house and wait for updates. Photos of turquoise water sent to the family group chat. Messages like, "We miss you, Grandma. Wish you were here," knowing full well they never planned to bring me. I looked at the cancelled tickets again. Then I opened the hall closet where I kept my passport. Still valid. I had a little over 14,000 in savings, another few thousand in bonds James left me. No debts. Nobody depending on me. Not anymore. I sat at that table with my laptop, the one Jasmine taught me how to use 2 Christmases ago, and I booked a flight. Kingston, Jamaica. 1 seat. Aisle. My hands were steady now. Next, I called my neighbor Shirley and asked if she'd water the plants and feed the cat. Sure thing, sugar. Going somewhere. Just a little trip, I said. She didn't push. That's why I loved Shirley. I packed 1 small suitcase, sensible shoes, my good silk scarf, and that plum-colored dress I hadn't worn since James's homegoing service. Not because of grief, but because it made me look like somebody, and I'd forgotten how to dress like I still mattered. The night before my flight, I sat on the porch. The street was hushed. Lightning bugs blinked slow over Miss Thelma's hedges. I thought about what they'd say when they realized. Maybe Marcus would call. Maybe he wouldn't. I found I didn't much care. For once, I wasn't the one staying behind. Morning came soft and golden. I locked the door, left a note for Shirley tucked under the welcome mat, and walked down the steps slowly, but with something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. I didn't look back. The woman at the gate glanced at my passport, then at me, and gave that polite little smile young folks give when they see someone old traveling alone. "Enjoy your flight, ma'am." I didn't answer. Just walked forward, one hand gripping the handle of my suitcase, the other holding my boarding pass like a prayer card. I hadn't flown in nearly 30 years. The airport felt like a city inside a city, all glass and noise and people dragging their complicated lives behind them. But I moved through it like I had every right to be there, because pretending you belong is half the battle. That's something you learn when you've been quietly invisible for too long. On the plane, I took my aisle seat, sat still while everybody else wrestled bags into overhead bins. The seat beside me stayed empty until the last second. Then a young man, mid-30s, wedding ring, gentle eyes, dropped into it with a heavy breath. "Long trip?" he asked as we pulled back from the gate. "Long enough," I said. He smiled, then left me alone, which I appreciated. I slept most of the flight. The kind of sleep that's not deep but necessary. The kind that keeps sorrow from curdling into bitterness. When I woke, we were over the Caribbean. I looked out the window across my neighbor's shoulder. Endless blue, the kind of blue that don't exist in Ohio. That was the moment I knew I'd really done it. I wasn't here to take pictures. I wasn't here for souvenirs. I was here because they told me not to come. At the airport in Kingston, the heat wrapped around me like a warm hand on my back. Even inside the terminal, I could smell hibiscus and diesel and something sweet I couldn't name. I took a taxi to a little guest house on a side street in New Kingston. Nothing fancy, but clean. The woman at the front desk had locks down to her waist and called me auntie like it still meant something. In the room, I set my suitcase by the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cry. I just looked at the tiled floor for a long while. Grief doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it's just sitting still, thinking of every birthday and holiday where you smiled through being unwanted. I spent that first evening walking, not far, just a few blocks. Found a little jerk stand where the smoke was thick and the smell could raise the dead. Ordered chicken and festival bread. The man behind the grill was patient with me, didn't rush, didn't push. I ate slowly, sauce on my fingers, not looking at my phone once. Nobody was waiting for an update from me anyway. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The light here was different, warmer, like it had been soaked in honey. I opened the shutters and let it pour in. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I unwrapped my hair, let my gray coils fall loose around my face instead of pinning them back the way I always did to look respectable, presentable, small. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. My mother used to say, "Baby, your hair is your crown." Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped wearing it. I asked the front desk girl for a recommendation. Not tourist spots. Somewhere quiet. She wrote something down. "Try Port Royal," she said. "It's old. Very peaceful. Full of spirits, if you believe in that sort of thing." So I went. Crumbling walls, fishing boats rocking in shallow water, old cannons sunk in sand. Everything was slow and stubbornly beautiful. I walked until my knees complained. Then I sat on a low wall near the water and just existed while young couples passed by, laughing in patois, bright and unbothered. No one stared at me. No one told me I was too old. No one told me to just watch the house. I thought of my granddaughter Jasmine, 16, always sending me selfies with wild filters and her lips poked out. I wondered what she'd say if she saw me here. Probably scream, maybe cry laughing. I reached into my bag and pulled out a postcard I'd picked up that morning. I hadn't planned to write, but my hand moved on its own. "Dear Jasmine, guess where I am? Jamaica. Baby. The sea is bluer than anything you've ever painted. I hope you're good. Love. Grandma Mae." I didn't write to my son or his wife. They didn't need to know. The post office was near a rum bar. I dropped the card in, then ordered a ginger beer, drank it slow, the way my mama used to sip her coffee on the porch when the house was still and the world hadn't woken up yet. That evening, back in my room, I caught myself humming. An old hymn. One James used to sing in the shower on Sunday mornings, off-key and full of joy. I hadn't thought of it in years. I wasn't young. I wasn't particularly brave. But I was finally somewhere I chose to be. And at 72, that counted for everything. I didn't plan on meeting anyone. That wasn't the point. But life has its own clock, and it don't ask your permission before it wins. It happened at breakfast 2 days after I arrived. I was at a little table near the window, sipping Blue Mountain coffee and spreading guava jam on toast with more care than necessary. Across from me at the next table sat a woman about my age. Silver hair pressed into smooth finger waves, eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed reading glasses perched low on her nose. "You use too much jam," she said. Not unkindly. I looked up, slightly amused. "Better than too little." She nodded. "Fair point." That was the beginning. Her name was Betty. Retired school principal from New Orleans, traveling alone like me. Widowed, she added, "easy as you please," like it was just another line on her resume. She had that particular brand of confidence certain Southern women carry like good perfume. Not too strong, just quietly undeniable. We started walking together, not far, just morning strolls through the quieter parts of town. I liked the way she noticed things. Not the postcard views, but the small details everyone else walked past. A hand-painted sign for a barber shop that read "Blessed Hands." A cat stretched out in a doorway like it owned the block. She wasn't trying to capture anything for Instagram. She just looked. Really looked. At lunch, we sat under a corrugated tin awning sipping rum punch. She told me about her students, the hard-headed ones she secretly loved best. I told her about my garden back home, how the collard greens came in beautiful but the tomatoes fought me every summer. "And your family?" she asked. I paused. "They're fine," I said. "They just figured I was too old to travel." Her eyes narrowed. "They said that to you?" I nodded. She didn't make a scene, just sipped her drink. "But you're here," she said. "So they were wrong." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan turning slow, thinking about all the years I'd stayed in my lane. The birthday dinners I cooked but never sat down to enjoy because somebody needed more sweet tea or another napkin. The vacations I helped pay for but was never invited on. How many times I'd told myself, "They're just busy," or "You're needed here." But I wasn't needed. Not really. Not beyond the cooking, the babysitting, the dependable presence that never asked for anything back. The next morning, Betty knocked on my door. She had a folded map under her arm and a spark in her eye. "Trinidad," she said. "Carnival season just wrapped but the energy's still there. I've always wanted to see Port of Spain. You and me." I hesitated. "Why not?" I said. We booked tickets that afternoon. 2 women over 70 buying one-way seats like college girls on spring break. We laughed about it over dinner, though something in me still felt tight, like an old muscle not used to stretching. That evening, I got a message from my daughter-in-law Keisha. First I'd heard from her in weeks. "Did you check the gutters? Marcus said the drainage has been acting up." "No, how are you?" "No, where are you?" "Just the house." Always the house. I didn't reply. Instead, I packed. Folded the plum dress with care, wrapped my earrings in tissue, rolled my shoes in a plastic bag. Old habits from years of practical living. I moved slowly, not from age, but from savoring. In the corner of my room sat a small glass jar with a single yellow hibiscus, a gift from Betty. "Because you look like a woman who appreciates flowers without needing a reason." She wasn't wrong. That night, I placed the phone in a drawer and turned it off. No pings, no alerts. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like someone waiting to be included. I felt like someone moving forward, one step at a time. The flight to Port of Spain was short. We sat side by side, a paper bag of meat patties between us. Betty read a mystery novel. I looked out the window. The sea below sparkled like somebody had scattered diamonds across it, reckless and beautiful. It reminded me of the rhinestone brooch James bought me at a yard sale the year Marcus was born. Cheap setting, but it caught the light like it was worth something. He said everything beautiful doesn't have to cost you. I never thought I'd see a sky that proved him right. We didn't talk much. That was the comfort of Betty. She didn't need to fill silence, didn't press with questions. When the plane dipped through a cloud, she looked up from her book and offered me the last patty without a word. I took it and smiled. That was enough. Port of Spain greeted us with steel drums in the distance and air that tasted like rain and sugar cane. The guest house was colorful, the kind of place where every wall was painted a different shade and the porch swing creaked like it had stories. Our room had a little balcony that overlooked a street where children chased each other between parked cars and a woman braided hair under a mango tree. "I want to see the savannah," Betty said, dropping her bag onto the bed. "And I want to find something fried and unreasonable." We did both. The Queen's Park savannah was wide and green and full of life that didn't apologize for itself. Joggers circled the path, vendors sold coconut water from carts, and somewhere in the distance a man played pan so sweet it made your chest ache. Standing in front of the magnificent Seven, those grand old colonial houses lined up like proud aunties at a church processional, I felt something loosen in me. Not awe exactly, more like recognition. That feeling when beauty isn't trying to impress you, it just is, and you don't realize it's moving you until your throat gets tight. We walked for hours afterward, stopping at a double stand where the vendor flirted with Betty, and she flirted right back. She had a way of doing that, making herself feel young without pretending to be. I envied it. That night we ate at a small place off the main road, far from the tourists. Polo with pigeon peas, fried plantain, and cold sorrel in short glasses. Laughter that came easier than it had in years. "You're different now," Betty said softly. "How so?" "You sit taller. Less folded in on yourself." I didn't know how to answer, so I just nodded. Later, back in the room, I checked my phone out of habit. 24 missed calls. 14 from Keisha, the rest from Marcus. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Just scrolled through the messages. "Where are you? Are you okay? Did something happen?" Then a voice memo. Marcus's voice, tired and clipped. "Mom, please call us. The kids are upset. We thought you'd be home." I stared at the screen, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, guilt. But what I felt was distance. Not cruelty, just space. Enough to breathe. The next day, Betty slept in. I wandered through a quiet part of town, following my nose instead of a map. Found a shop with bright cotton wraps and handmade jewelry. Bought neither, but tried both on. Looked at myself in a cracked mirror and saw someone I almost recognized. In the afternoon, we took a taxi up into the hills above the city, away from the noise. We sat under a flamboyant tree and watched Port of Spain sprawl below us like a patchwork quilt someone stitched with love and impatience. "This," I said, not meaning the view exactly. "This was missing." Betty nodded like she understood what I meant without me having to explain it. When we got back, there was another message. Marcus again. "Mom, did you cancel our vacation on purpose? We got to the airport and, never mind. Just please call. We're worried." I turned the phone off. That night, as we sat on the porch with the warm breeze carrying the scent of frangipani, Betty said, "So where next?" I thought for a moment. The answer rose up from somewhere deep, somewhere I didn't know was waiting. "Gonna," I said. "I want to go to Cape Coast." She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded slowly, like she understood the weight of what I was asking for. "Let's go then." Gonna welcomed us like a memory you didn't know you were carrying. Warm, ancient, and full of something that settled into your bones before your mind could catch up. The air at Kotoka Airport in Accra smelled like red earth and diesel and roasted plantain, and something underneath all of it that I couldn't name but that my body seemed to recognize. We took a bus to Cape Coast the next morning. The road wound through green so thick it looked like the land was holding its breath. Villages flashed by, children waving, women carrying baskets on their heads like queens who never needed crowns. Betty wasn't feeling well that day. Nothing serious. Just a low fever and aching joints from all the moving. "It's nothing," she waved me off. "I've had worse. Go on. See the castle." But I didn't go without her. Not that day. I brought her tea instead, real tea, not the powdered kind, brewed from fresh ginger I bought from a woman at the roadside who smiled at me like we'd met before in another life. I sat by Betty's bed, reading aloud from a book we'd picked up in Trinidad. A slow, quiet afternoon. She dozed off halfway through a paragraph, her face softer than I'd seen it in days. It reminded me of James in the VA hospital. The quiet breathing, The small acts of care nobody writes hymns about, but that hold the whole world together. I realized something then. I'd spent my entire life looking after others. Children, grandchildren, James, even the stray cat that showed up on the porch 10 years ago and never left. But this, sitting by Betty's bedside, checking her forehead, making sure she drank, this didn't feel like obligation. It felt like choice. And choice changes everything. That night, I cooked for us. Nothing fancy. Eggs, bread, tomatoes I bought from a corner vendor who called me auntie and threw in extra peppers for free. We ate on the little balcony wrapped in cotton wraps, the ocean somewhere out there in the dark, breathing. Betty was better, her color back, her voice strong again. Thank you, she said after we finished. For the eggs. For not leaving. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded and took another sip of tea. The next morning, I woke to the sound of drums. Not recorded, not distant, real drums coming from somewhere below, steady and ancient, like a heartbeat the earth had been holding since before any of us were born. I stood at the window barefoot, arms folded against the morning cool, and let the rhythm settle into my chest. By the time Betty was ready, we both knew where we were going. Cape Coast Castle. I'd read about it. Seen photos. But nothing prepares you. Nothing at all. The white walls gleamed in the sun like something holy, but what they held inside was the opposite of holy. The guide was a young Ghanaian man with a low voice and patient eyes. He led us through the courtyards, past the governor's quarters with their high ceilings and sea views, then down into the dungeons. The air changed. It got thick, damp, heavy with something that wasn't just humidity. It was memory. Hundreds of years of memory pressed into stone walls that still bore the scratches of fingernails. The guide spoke softly about what happened here. The women's dungeon. The men's dungeon. How they were kept in darkness for months before being shipped across the ocean to a life that wasn't life at all. I stopped walking. My feet wouldn't move. Betty reached for my hand and held it. Neither of us spoke. There were other tourists around us, but I couldn't see them. All I could see were the walls, the floor worn smooth by bodies, the narrow gutter carved for waste. I thought of my great-grandmother, whose name I never knew. I thought of the ones before her, whose names nobody knew. And I thought of every time someone told me to sit down, stay quiet, be grateful, watch the house. Then the guide led us to the door of no return. A small, narrow passage that opened to the sea. The last thing they saw before the ships. The last breath of African air. I stood in that doorway and something broke open in me that I didn't even know was sealed. Not tears, not at first. Just a sound low and deep, rising from my belly like a hymn I'd never learned but always known. Betty stood behind me, one hand on my shoulder. She was crying. I could feel her shaking. I stepped through the door. The sunlight hit me like a baptism. The sea stretched out, endless and indifferent, the same water that had carried millions away from this shore. I pressed my palm flat against the stone wall and whispered, I came back. I don't know who I was talking to. Maybe the ancestors. Maybe myself. Maybe the girl I used to be before the world taught me to shrink. But I said it again, louder. I came back. The guide looked at me. He'd seen this before, Americans standing in this doorway, undone. He didn't rush me. Betty didn't rush me. The sea didn't rush me. For the first time in my life, the whole world waited for Dorothy Mae to feel what she needed to feel. We sat outside the castle for a long time after. A woman selling fried yam brought us portions without us asking. I ate with my hands. The oil burned my fingers a little, but I didn't mind. Betty was quiet. Then she said, you know, when I retired, my students gave me a card. 63 signatures. I cried in the parking lot. But this. She paused. This is the cry that's been waiting your whole life. I nodded. She was right. Back at the guest house, I turned my phone on. 5 new messages. Keisha again. This isn't funny, Dorothy. And then, we're not sure what to tell the kids. And from Marcus, you've made your point. Had I? I wasn't even sure what point they thought I was making. I hadn't spoken a single word since they left me behind. Betty watched me read the messages. She didn't ask. Just poured tea and handed me the cup. That night, we found a small bar on the beach where a group of local musicians played highlife under a canopy of fairy lights. No menu, no tourists, just folks from the neighborhood, clinking bottles of Star beer and nodding their heads to the rhythm. One woman sang. Her voice was rough and golden, like something that had survived a fire and come out more beautiful for it. She sang about leaving, about being forgotten, about walking back into yourself. I sat there, eyes closed, heart strangely still. She wasn't singing for me, but I understood every note. Dakar felt like fire in the bones. Not just from the heat, though it pressed down like a warm iron, but from the life that pulsed in every street, every doorway, every voice that rose above the traffic and the call to prayer. It wasn't a city that asked permission to be noticed. It simply was. Bold, proud, unapologetic. We arrived in the late afternoon. Our guest house was tucked between a tailor's shop and a small cafe that smelled of thibodyen and fresh bread. The room was simple, but the balcony overlooked a courtyard where a baobab tree spread its arms like a grandmother gathering her children. Betty took one look and declared, "This place demands earrings." She disappeared into the bathroom and came out wearing gold hoops that caught the last of the sunlight. I had none to match, but I tied my head wrap high, the bright yellow one I'd bought in a market somewhere between grief and joy, and put on the plum dress. It fit different now. Not tighter or looser, just different. Like the body inside it had shifted. That evening, we went out without a plan. The streets were alive, not in the tourist way, but the way old cities breathe after sunset. We followed the sound of drums and landed in a courtyard where a group of Sabah drummers played while young men and women danced, feet striking the sand like conversations with the earth. A woman danced at the center. Her face wasn't smiling or posed, just full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Presence. Like she existed entirely in that moment, for herself, with no apology. I couldn't stop watching her. Betty leaned in and whispered, "She's older than we are." I looked closer. She was at least mid-70s. Her feet hit the ground with the force of a covenant. The crowd cheered. I didn't. I just watched, my heart suddenly too full for sound. The next day, we visited Gorey Island. Its pastel buildings and cobblestone lanes looked almost gentle, but I knew what this place was. Another door. Another threshold between before and after. The House of Slaves was smaller than Cape Coast, more intimate, more suffocating. The guide spoke in French first, then English. Betty translated the parts one missed, her voice low and steady. I stood in the doorway, the one they called the door of no return here too, and the ocean stared back at me the same way it had in Ghana. Patient. Unblinking. Holding everything it had witnessed and offering nothing in return. I didn't break this time. I just breathed. Long and slow. Like I was breathing for all the ones who couldn't. That afternoon, we sat at a cafe under a striped awning. Betty sipped bissap juice and read the news on her phone. I watched people pass. That's when I saw the family. 4 of them, 2 parents, 2 teenagers. The mother walked ahead, phone in hand, talking fast. The girl had braids like Jasmine's. The boy carried a backpack too big for his frame. It should have been unremarkable, but something about the mother's posture, sharp, distracted, impatient, made my breath catch. For a second, I saw Keisha's silhouette in that stranger, and my chest tightened. Not from hurt, but from something I still couldn't name. It passed. Back at the guest house, I found a message from Jasmine. "Grandma, where are you now?" That photo from Ghana was incredible. I showed it to my art teacher. She said, "You have a really good eye. Can I call you soon?" I smiled, then paused. I hadn't sent her a photo. Betty. Of course. I opened my phone gallery. There it was. Me in the doorway at Cape Coast Castle, one hand pressed to the stone wall, face turned toward the sea. I didn't remember her taking it. I didn't even remember standing that still. But there I was. Not posing. Not apologizing. Just existing. I typed back, Dakar now. It's hot and stubborn and full of beautiful noise. I'll call you tomorrow. You'd love it here. That night, I lay in bed and thought of all the places I'd never been because somebody had to stay behind and hold everything together. The times I'd said, you go ahead, I'll be fine, even when I wasn't. The trips I helped fund but was never asked along on. The weddings I helped plan but sat at the edge of. But now here I was in Dakar, in a soft cotton nightgown I'd bought from a street vendor who'd called me La Reine, the Queen. I closed my eyes and let the distant sound of drums float through the window. Tomorrow I'd dance. Not for anyone, just to remember that I could. It started with a call I didn't answer. Then another. And another. By mid-morning, the screen lit up again. Marcus. Same name, same number, same silence when I let it ring out. 26 calls in 2 days. One voicemail after another. I didn't listen to a single one. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just done with begging to be heard. Betty was already dressed when I came out of the bathroom. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and a linen dress that floated behind her like she was walking through her own music video. There's a market near the port, she said. And I feel like bargaining with somebody. We walked there slowly, my sandals scraping against the old stones, the sun pressing the back of my neck like a child's warm hand. The market was alive. Not polished, not curated. Real. Men calling out prices, women laughing over fabric, children darting between stalls with sticky mango fingers. I felt something loosen in my chest. A thread pulled free from a knot I didn't know I'd been carrying. I bought a scarf. Yellow, bright as marigolds. It wasn't a color I usually wore, but it caught the light like it belonged in my life. While Betty negotiated over a leather bag, I sat under a faded umbrella with a cold hibiscus drink and checked my messages. Maybe habit, maybe hope. There was a voice memo. Not from Marcus this time. From Jasmine. Her voice was soft, uncertain. Grandma, I don't know if you'll hear this, but I just wanted to say I miss you. Mom and Dad are kind of freaking out. They think you're trying to prove something, but I don't think so. I think you just got tired of being left behind. I would have been too. Anyway, I hope you're safe. You look happy in that photo. I've never seen you look like that. Just call me, okay? Even if it's just for a minute. I listened to it twice. Then again. That last line cracked something open. Even if it's just for a minute. I went back to the guest house alone while Betty hunted for spices. Sat on the edge of the bed with the yellow scarf in my lap. Then I picked up the phone and called. Jasmine answered on the second ring. Grandma. Her voice wobbled. I could hear a kettle whistling, someone's footsteps across tile. I'm here, sweetheart. Oh my God. Wait. The phone shuffled. A door closed. Then quiet. I was starting to think you'd gone full rogue, she said, her voice shaking just a little. Not rogue, I said. Just found something I forgot I'd lost. What? Myself. She was quiet a moment. I get it, she said softly. I think I get it more than Mom and Dad do. I believed her. We talked for 15 minutes about school, her drawings, a boy she liked who didn't know she existed. Normal things, precious things. Then she asked, careful as a girl stepping around broken glass. Are you coming back soon? I don't know yet, I said honestly. Can I see you when you do? Of course, baby. We hung up. I felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because something true had passed between us. And truth, real truth, always clears the air. Betty came back with a paper bag full of roasted cashews and a grin like she'd conquered a small nation. Victory, she declared. We ate them on the balcony. The sunset turned the sky the color of ripe mango. I think they're starting to understand, I said after a while. Who? My family. She chewed slowly, then nodded. About time. Marrakesh hit us like a wall of sound and spice. The Medina swallowed us whole the moment we stepped through the gate, a maze of copper lamps, stacked leather, mountains of turmeric and cumin, voices rising and falling like a song nobody was conducting. Betty grabbed my arm. "Don't let go of me in here," she said. "I'll end up in someone's living room buying a rug." We laughed, but she held on tight. We stayed in a riad tucked behind a carved wooden door that opened into a courtyard with a fountain and orange trees. The room had mosaic floors and a bed draped in white linen. It smelled like rosewater and old stone. The kind of place that tells you to slow down without saying a word. That evening, I sat alone on the rooftop terrace while Betty napped. The call to prayer drifted over the rooftops, layered and ancient. I scrolled through my messages, not to react, just to remind myself I could look and choose silence. But one message stopped me. "Marcus." Just one line. "Mom, did we lose you?" No anger. No guilt trip. Just a question. A recognition, maybe. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the notebook I'd bought in Dakar. I hadn't written a single word in it yet. Now I began. Things I've never said out loud. I wasn't always tired. I just got tired of not being seen. Every time you called me old-fashioned, I swallowed a sentence I should have said. I still remember how you looked at 5 years old when you brought me a dandelion from the backyard and called it the most beautiful flower in the world. That was the last time you gave me something just because. I miss being called by my name. I didn't cry. I just kept writing. In the morning, we went to the Bahia Palace. Betty hummed the whole way. She never hummed in the mornings. "What's the occasion?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "We're going to see a palace, Dorothy." I hummed for architecture. The palace was everything and more. Carved cedarwood ceilings, zellige tilework in patterns that made your eyes dance. Courtyards open to the sky like the building itself needed room to breathe. I walked those gardens like I belonged there. No one stopped me. No one called me dear or offered to hold my arm like I might shatter. And for once, I didn't feel like shattering. I thought of all the stories locked inside me. Years of quiet endurance, of pressing down disappointment to make space for duty. Standing in that palace, I felt them loosening. Not spilling, just shifting, making room for something new. Essaouira was our last stop. Neither of us said it aloud, but we both knew. We'd crossed enough borders to recognize when a journey starts winding down. When the push that carried you forward becomes something quieter, something settled. We arrived in the afternoon. The town smelled like salt and argan oil and grilled sardines. Blue and white walls everywhere, like the sea had painted the city in its own image. We found a guest house near the ramparts. From the rooftop, we could see fishing boats pulling in at dusk, nets spread out like tired prayers. I stood there a long time, one hand on the railing, the wind pulling at my scarf. Betty picked up a piece of sea glass from the terrace ledge and slipped it in her pocket. We walked the beach that evening. The waves weren't dramatic, just steady, persistent. An older couple passed us, holding hands like teenagers who'd run out of words and didn't need more. My phone buzzed. I didn't move for a while, then pulled it out. "Marcus again. Please just let us hear your voice." I opened the voice memo app and pressed record. I didn't plan it. Didn't rehearse. Just spoke. "Marcus, I'm not angry. But I am changed. I spent most of my life waiting to be asked, to be needed, to be seen. And I was, sometimes. But mostly I was the background to your lives. I don't say this to make you feel guilty. I say it because it's true. I love you. I always will. But I'm not coming back to the role you gave me. If you want me in your life, it won't be as a backup plan or a babysitter or a name on the emergency contact form. It'll have to be as a person. A whole one. I hope you understand. Good night." I hit send. The sea murmured something I couldn't quite translate. Back at the guest house, Betty was reading by the lamp. She looked up. "You sent it." I nodded. "How do you feel?" Like I finally said the thing I'd been swallowing for 20 years. She smiled. About damn time. That night I dreamed of a hallway, long and dim, lined with closed doors. I walked it barefoot, fingers brushing each handle. And one by one, the doors clicked open behind me. I didn't look back. In the morning, no reply from Marcus. But there was a message from Jasmine. A photo. She'd drawn something. Me on the beach, scarf in my hair, face turned to the wind. The caption read, "She looks like she remembered who she was." I stared at it a long time. Then turned to Betty. "Let's go dancing tonight." She blinked. "Dancing? Yes. Do your knees even allow that?" I grinned. "They'll learn." The bar wasn't meant for us. It pulsed with energy too young, too fast. A converted warehouse near the port, dim lights, loud bass, a haze of perfume and salt air. But we went anyway. Betty wore her gold hoops, hair loose, lipstick precise. I wore the yellow scarf tied in my hair like a crown I'd earned. We found a table near the back and let the beat find us. I didn't wait for a partner. Didn't wait for permission. I just stood up and walked onto that floor. At first it felt borrowed, like wearing someone else's skin. My limbs stiff, breath shallow. But the rhythm pulled me forward and the years dropped off like dust from a winter coat. I danced. Not gracefully. Not skillfully. But fully. A young woman passed and grinned, offered her hand. I took it, spun once, laughed, and let go. I didn't need her to carry the beat. I had my own. Betty joined me. We danced like schoolgirls at a reunion. Breathless, ridiculous, alive. Betty left 2 days later. We hugged at the station. Neither of us said goodbye. Just soon. That night, alone in the room, I ordered mint tea from the cafe downstairs and sat by the window. My scarf on the table, my shoes by the door. I didn't feel finished, but I felt full. The flight home was quiet. I didn't watch a movie. Didn't read. Just sat with the hum of the engine and my thoughts, watching the land below shrink and flatten and vanish. When I landed, no one was waiting. I didn't expect them to be. The air was thicker here, the sky more gray. It smelled like damp grass and recycled air, familiar in that way forgotten places are. My house was exactly as I'd left it. Shirley had watered the plants. The porch was swept. Inside, everything held its breath. I walked room to room, touching things. The edge of the couch. The chipped ceramic bowl on the table. James's photo by the fireplace. Nothing had moved, but everything had changed. I made tea. Sat at the kitchen table with the window cracked. Let the quiet stretch. My phone buzzed. "Jasmine. Are you home?" "Yes." 10 minutes later. "Can I come by?" "Yes." Doors open. She arrived in 20. No speech, no ceremony. Just a long, fierce hug that said more than either of us could. She sat across from me, backpack still on one shoulder. She looked older. Not by years, by understanding. "I liked your list," she said. I blinked. "My list." She smiled. "You left your notebook open in one of the photos." I read it. I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. "I've been making one too," she said, pulling out a small spiral notebook. The first page read, "Things I refuse to inherit quietly." The belief that black women must be strong before they're allowed to be soft. The idea that aging means disappearing. The habit of saying I'm fine when I'm drowning. The silence that follows when someone says you're too much. The shame passed down like furniture nobody asked for. I read every line. Then looked at this girl woman who'd watched me vanish and come back. "You're going to be just fine," I said. She nodded. "Because you were." The doorbell rang. Jasmine looked at me. "That's them." I didn't move. "I'll get it," she said gently. Marcus stepped into the kitchen like it was holy ground. His face was tired, older than I remembered. He looked at me like someone waiting for permission to speak. I wanted to come alone, he said. But Keisha insisted. She appeared behind him. No makeup, no armor. Just real. We don't know how to start, she said. I stood. You already did. You showed up. Marcus stepped forward. I didn't want to lose you. You didn't, I said. You just stopped seeing me. He nodded. I'm sorry. Not grand. Not rehearsed. Just honest. It was enough. I made tea, I said. Still some in the pot. They sat. Not as owners of the space. Not as people expecting forgiveness like a favor. But as people who finally understood that the seat at the table wasn't theirs by default. It had to be earned. When they left, Marcus lingered at the door. He started. Do you want to come for dinner sometime? Just us. You and me. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. He looked relieved by that. Then I reached into my bag and handed him a thin envelope. What's this? A copy of the tickets. The ones I cancelled. He stared at it. I kept them, I said. Not out of spite. Out of truth. So we don't forget how easy it was to erase me. He didn't open it. Just tucked it in his pocket and nodded. That night, I stood at the mirror, studying my face. Older. Yes. But not tired. There were new lines that hadn't been there before the trip. But they weren't cracks. They were paths. Before bed, I wrote one last page. Things I no longer apologize for. Wanting space. Wanting more. Saying no. Leaving quietly. Coming back louder. And at the bottom, in small careful script, I was never too old. I was just never asked if I still dreamed. Now I don't wait to be asked. I go.